Hey there folks, welcome back. Ricky Tran here with Cutlery and More. Today we are going to look at Shun versus Wusthof. What we're going to do today is we're going to look at the design philosophies between these two companies and show you what the major differences are between Japanese and German knives. There is a very good reason why both companies make knives that are very highly regarded. Now the first knife that we'll look at from Shun is the Premier. This knife here uses a VG Max core steel, heat treated to a 61 on the Rockwell scale. Now the cutting angle of this knife is 16 degrees on each side, giving you an effective cutting angle of 32 degrees. The VG Max core steel is sandwiched in between 34 layers of Damascus cladding on both sides, giving you a total of 68 layers of Damascus cladding. You also have a hammered or tsuchime finish on the Premier line. Very beautiful finish. You also have a very high polish on both sides of the blade. This knife is heat treated from a 60 to a 61 on the Rockwell scale. With the Premier line, Shun is offering a knife that has the core steel of a Japanese knife while giving you the added benefit of the profile that you would normally find on a Western or German knife. It's a great compromise for those who are looking to get a Japanese knife but have always used German knives in the past. The spine of the Premier is very well polished. The choil or the neck area is also very well polished. You have a stainless steel bolster and you'll have a stainless steel end cap. The handle is a walnut packer wood with a medium to high gloss finish. The shaping and tapering of the handle gives you a very good grip even when handling greasy or oily foods. Next we have the Shun dual core. The design of this knife is a Kuritsuke profile. They are a little bit more specialized in terms of what their function are in the kitchen. They tend to have less rocking ability, but they offer more power and lateral chopping. The Shun dual core is one of the first knives with this particular knife design. Most knives will have one of two designs. You have either a monosteel, where the entire blade is made of one steel material, and you have a cladded design, where the core steel will be one material, and then the cladding on the exterior would be a different material. The entire blade is actually made of two different steels merged into one. That's why you have this amazing, beautiful Damascus-like pattern called a herringbone pattern. The end result here is a beautiful blade design that has 71 micro layers of VG10 and VG2 in a herringbone pattern. This is definitely one of the most distinctive blade designs you will ever see. Coming down to the handle, we have an ebony packer wood in an octagonal handle design. The ferrule is a stainless steel ferrule, also very high polished. If you look at the spine of Japanese knives in general, they typically are a little bit thinner than German knives. That mainly has to do with how the food culture has evolved in Japan, and their food culture has really shaped the way their knives are designed. In terms of the Rockwell or hardness rating, the Shun dual core is heat treated from a 60 to a 61 on the Rockwell scale. And next we have the Shun Hero. This knife here is definitely one of the most distinctive knives you will pick up from Shun. It uses an SG2 core steel or Super Gold 2 core steel with a 32 layer of Damascus finish with nickel and stainless steel. Very rarely will you ever see a knife manufacturer mix two different steels for their Damascus cladding. Now, in addition to that Damascus finish, you also have a hammered finish or a tsuchime finish on the top half of the Hero. The heat treatment of this knife is very high. You're looking at 64 on the Rockwell scale. Now for many years, finding a kitchen knife that had a heat treatment of 63 and above was considered mythical or the unicorn. And today, thanks to advancements in metallurgy, we're seeing knives regularly in the 62 to 63 range, and now Shun has come up with a knife that is heat treated to a 64 on the Rockwell scale. The bolster is a nickel bolster, which is very nice and very highly polished, something we don't see very often. Coming down to the radically shaped handle, this is one of the most comfortable handles you will ever hold. It uses a charcoal packer wood with a crimson lining, something that you really don't see, and gives this knife a very aggressive and distinctive look. The tapering of this handle is something that is also very unique. You have a tapering from the top of the handle to the middle of the handle, and also the profile of this handle is also tapered from the top and bottom of the handle. From photos and from afar, you will think that this knife has a very simple ovalized handle, but once you hold it, you will understand that this knife here has a radically shaped, sculpted design that very few knife manufacturers can lay claim to. In the middle of the handle here, you see a beautiful mosaic rivet. Now this is a symbol of the samurai family crest. The Shun Hero is taking the best of everything Shun has to offer into one package. Now we will look at the Wustofs. So the first knife we're going to look at is the Wusthof Classic Chef Knife. This knife here is the original Wusthof that we all have come to know and love. The classic line of knives offer the largest selection of knives available in the Wusthof lineup. For all of their knives, Wusthof uses a single type of German steel called X50CR-MOV15. Yes, I know, that is a tongue twister. Now we look at this knife here, we see a classic design chef knife profile with a full bolster and a finger guard. The finger guard and full bolster offers the knife a number of benefits. The first one is that it gives the blade an overall stiffness. The second thing is that it offers your middle finger a guard from grinding against the neck of the knife in a pinch grip. Coming down to the handle, you see that this is a palm handle with a very traditional Western knife handle. It's a very sturdy handle design that is tried and true. We also have a stop at the end of the handle which prevent your hands from slipping off when handling greasy or oily foods. Next, we have the classic icon with the creme handle. The creme handle is made exclusively for cutlery and more. Now if we look very closely, we will see that the classic icon has a very similar profile to the classic, except now we no longer have the full bolster. In place, we have a tapering bolster. The first benefit of having a tapering bolster is that you do save a few grams from the overall weight of the knife. The second benefit is that you are now able to sharpen your Wusthof down to its heel. The handle is a little bit more radically shaped. It's a bit more sculpted. Now even though the handle shape is very different from the classic, it's using the same palm material. It's a polyoxymethylene, which is a very robust material. It's bacteria resistant, warp resistant, and crack resistant. And because the palm material does not absorb any water, you're never going to have any sort of expansion or contraction issues such as you would find on a wooden handle. And the last knife from the Wusthof lineup is the Epicure. The Epicure is the newest line of knives. It offers a similar profile as the classic, but a little bit more modernized. You'll see that the belly here is a little bit more aggressive than the belly on the classic and on the classic icon. You still have the full bolster, so they've kept that in their design queue. You still have the exact same high carbon German stainless steel, the X50 CR-MOV15. So in terms of overall performance, you have the same great performance that you would normally expect in the classic or the classic icon. But coming down to the handle, you'll see that the handle is also radically shaped and very different from their other line of knives. This is where the largest departure of this knife is from the rest of the Wusthof lineup. The tapering of the handle is very nice. It has a very aggressive taper from top to bottom, but it also is very sculpted and very curved. However, the material is now a composite wood material as opposed to a palm handle. Now having a composite material for your handle has a few benefits. One of the biggest complaints that you would hear with people using German knives is that the handles can feel a little bit heavy. Now with the composite material, your handle is now much lighter. The other added benefit is that the composite handle feels very much like natural wood in your hands. It's very much warm to the touch. On a cold day when you first pick up your knife, this handle would not make your hand uncomfortable or cold at all. So you can see in this brief video, the design philosophy from these two companies are very different. Wusthof uses a very highly regarded steel for all their knives. It's a steel that they are very comfortable with and that their customers have come to know and love. The X50 CR-MOV15 is very good in terms of its overall toughness. Since it is heat treated to a 58 on the Rockwell scale, you will have a much lower chance of chipping this knife if you were to accidentally cut into bone or a hard pit of a fruit. Wusthof wants every single one of their customers to experience that same great high carbon German stainless steel and that toughness and that reliability that Wusthof have been known for the last 200 years of making knives. Shun, on the other hand, are always pushing the boundaries of sharpness, edge retention, and knife design. You can see right here that every single one of these knives have different handle materials, different colors, their blade profiles are completely different, and they cater to very different customers. So some of you may be wondering, what is the benefit of buying a Japanese over a German knife or a German knife over a Japanese knife? One of the first things that you hear people talk about is edge retention and toughness of the blade. Anything over 60 is considered very hard. Anything under 57 is considered relatively soft. Being that they're a 58, they are right in the middle. So you have a good ratio of edge retention and edge toughness relative to, let's say, a Shun, that you have a knife that is heat treated to a 60 to a 64, you have a higher chance of chipping your blade if you were to misuse it. So while it is kind of scary to think that your knife has a higher chance of chipping, here are a few things you can do to make sure that doesn't happen. First off, buy a good quality wood cutting board. An end grain is preferable. With end grain cutting boards, your knives will cut into the grain of the cutting board as opposed to across the grain. The second thing is not putting your knives into an automatic dishwasher. The first obvious reason is that you can risk yourself, your child, or a guest in your home reaching into a dishwasher load to grab a fork or a spoon and cutting themselves on that knife. The second thing is that the heat from the hot water and drying cycle can cause the wooden handles on your knife to contract and expand, causing rivets to fall out and over time destroying the handle itself. So even though Japanese knives may have a higher chance of chipping, as long as you care and maintain for them properly, that should be minimized. The next thing that you may have heard is that Japanese knives can cut through anything, like a katana. On an absolute scale, yes, a Japanese knife heat treated to a 64 will get sharper and stay sharper longer than a knife heat treated to a 58 on the Rockwell scale. However, getting that knife to its absolute sharpness requires a considerable amount of skill and time, such as sharpening your knives on a whetstone. So just because you can go out and buy a Japanese knife that you can shave with, it does not mean that that knife will stay that sharp forever. On the other hand, a Wusthof that is heat treated to a 58 on the Rockwell scale can get to about 90 to 95% as sharp as the Shun with just a honing rod. There are world-renowned chefs that will use nothing more than a honing rod to keep their knives sharp on a daily basis. So true, a Japanese knife can potentially get sharper and stay sharper longer than a German knife. Getting there is not quite that easy. As you can see here, there is no clear winner as to what knife you should buy. Japanese knife manufacturers have a very different design philosophy when compared to German knife manufacturers. You need to find out what is important to you. Is it absolute sharpness? Is it robustness? Does buying a knife with exotic steels excite you, or would you rather go with a steel that has been tried and true? Both companies offer limited lifetime warranties for their knives. Either way, you will not go wrong with buying a knife from Wusthof or from Shun. We will have links in the video's description below to each of the products that were featured in today's video. We are also taking video requests. If there is a product or products on cutlerymore.com that you would like to see featured here on our channel, please leave a comment below. Well, thank you again for being with us today. We'll catch you in the next video. Hey there folks, welcome back. Ricky Tran here with Cutlery and More. Today we are going to look at Shun versus Wusthof. What we're going to do today is we're going to look at the design philosophies between these two companies and show you what the major differences are between Japanese and German knives. There is a very good reason why both companies make knives that are very highly regarded. Now the first knife that we'll look at from Shun is the Premier. This knife here uses a VG Max core steel heat treated to a 61 on the Rockwell scale. Now the cutting angle of this knife is 16 degrees on each side, giving you an effective cutting angle of 32 degrees. The VG Max core steel is sandwiched in between 34 layers of Damascus cladding on both sides, giving you a total of 68 layers of Damascus cladding. You also have a hammered or Tsuchime finish on the Premier line. Very beautiful finish. You also have a very high polish on both sides of the blade. This knife is heat treated from a 60 to a 61 on the Rockwell scale. With the Premier line, Shun is offering a knife that has the core steel of a Japanese knife while giving you the added benefit of the profile that you would normally find on a Western or German knife. It's a great compromise for those who are looking to get a Japanese knife but have always used German knives in the